In this lecture, we will discuss social survey and report writing. I now present the lecture. This lecture was earlier delivered at Asansol Girls College on 13th December 2018. In this lecture, we will learn what is social survey, how to process and analyze data, and how to write a research report. What is social survey? Scott and Marshall defined the social survey as any systematic collection of facts about a defined social group. More precisely, a social survey is a method of data collection that employs both interviewing and sampling to produce quantitative datasets which are amenable to computer based analysis. Lenscom classified social survey into a number of types. Postal questionnaires. These are questionnaires which are sent to respondents by post. Face to face interviews. Here, the researcher or their representatives meet the subjects and interview them. Telephone interviews. Respondents are approached through telephone and are interviewed. Documents. For example, the survey of literature. According to Denscom, the social survey is a strategy, not a method. Here we'll discuss sampling. A sample represents a small part of the population. See, a population in a population, every instance is included, but in sample, a small portion of the whole is included. Types of sampling. There are two types: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is also known as random sampling. Here, the sample is chosen randomly through mechanical means. Probability sampling is regarded as the most scientific type of sampling as it is unbiased. When statisticians refer to a sample, they usually refer to probability sampling. Taking a random sample or probability sample calls for planning. Firstly, you have to list the population or universe. Secondly, you have to draw a percentage of sample through a mechanical means like a lottery or random table. In the random table, the numbers are so arranged that there is no symmetry. A table of random numbers is usually available in statistics books like Snedeker and Constant's statistical methods. The advantages of random sample. Since probability sampling is unbiased, inferential statistics like chi-square, t-test, etc. can be used. But there is a major disadvantage because probability sampling takes plenty of time. It is rigid. If the respondents in the sample are not available, they have to be randomly replaced from a randomly drawn standby sample. This is a random table. Here we'll find that you can take a sample from vertically, horizontally, or like this across. There are mainly three types of probability sample, there are like simple random sample. Here the simple mechanical means is adopted to draw a sample from a population. Then a stratified random sample, the population is divided into several strata based on a criterion. For example, in one study, I divided the University of Calcutta University students into strata based on type of discipline studied. From each strata, a random sample was drawn. Then there is another type of sample known as systematic sampling. Here, some system is involved in drawing a sample. For example, every 10th person in a universe may stand a chance of being selected. Well, there's also a fourth type of sample. This is known as in area of cluster sample. The universe is divided into large areas. Random samples are taken from these areas. These areas are then sampled further. In this manner, sampling is done till the researchers get the unit in which they intend to do research. Here is an example drawn from Good and Hat's book. Say this box is a graphical representation of the area of the United States. We then divide the United States into many smaller areas. From each of the smaller areas, we select one sample. And then from each of these areas, we select one sample. From each of these areas, we now select a sample, one area. And ultimately, each segment, we end up with our sample. Non-probability sampling. Unlike statisticians, sociologists cannot always abide by the rule of random sampling due to various reasons. Say there is lack of time, the population is floating. Well, then the only way out is non-probability sampling. There are many types of non-probability sampling. One is accidental sampling. The researcher here reaches out and takes whoever is available. Say you want to do research on bus passengers. So what do? You simply reach out and take whoever is willing to be interviewed. Another type of sample is the quota sample. The sample is divided into two or more quotas. For example, we may divide students into boys and girls and take a quota sample from them. While doing two major UGC major research projects in 2006 to 8 and 2013 to 15, I realized that I don't have the freedom to draw a random sample as it takes a lot of time and is rigid. So I opted for working with quota samples. Purposive sample or judgment sample. Depending on the purpose of the researcher takes a sample. Major advantage of non-probability sample is that it takes less time than a random sample. It is flexible, it is convenient, and also economical. But there's a major limitation. The possibility of bias in selection of respondents cannot be ruled out. And also, we cannot use inferential statistics like chi-square, t-test, u-test, etc. Now, we were discussing survey. So, now let's look at the survey instruments. The questionnaire is one survey instrument. It may be defined as a document consisting of all open-ended and close-ended questions needed for a survey. This is an example of an open-ended question. Age, as on January 2014. This is an open-ended question. Example of a close-ended question. To which social class would you say you belong to? Working, peasantry, middle class, others. Please state. Interview schedules. Interview may be defined as a social interaction which may result in a transfer of information from an interviewee to an interviewer or researchers. Here we are speaking of the structured interview based on schedules. But the interview schedule does not materially differ from a questionnaire. Unlike the questionnaire, which is self administered, the interview schedule is administered by a trained interviewer who is orally asks questions to the interviewee and fills up the schedule. It may be more complex than the questionnaire. For example, unlike the questionnaire, the interview schedule may contain exceptions or additions. If the subject answers question X, for example, the interviewer is instructed to ask some other questions. If the subject answers question Y, the interviewer is told to omit some questions. The cost of an interview is also greater than that of a questionnaire. A questionnaire may be sent by post, but an interviewer has to be paid the travel allowance to travel to the place where the interviewer stays in addition to a fee. Now we come to the data processing and data analysis. This comes at the end of the research. By data processing, we mean making the raw data usable. The first step is to edit the questionnaires or interview schedules to ensure that uniformity has been maintained in the manner of asking questions. In case of open ended questions, you should prepare an inventory of responses. After that, you can categorize the responses for coding. Now, coding is the second step of data processing. It means mainly assignment of codes to each of the categories. Usually, numbers are given as codes. All items and responses are coded. Together, they form a code book. Here is an extract from the code book which I developed for my PhD thesis. Say column number 8, entry number question 8. Question number 8, age. This is the subject matter. Below 21 years, 1. 21 to 25 years, 2. 26 to 30 years, 3. 31 to 35 years, 4. 36 to 40 years, 5. So these are the codes. Range of codes 1 to 5 and number of digits on card. Then there was like this, that how many digits you have to, how many digits you have to give on the card. You have to decide. Then column number 9, entry number, question 9. Question number 9, married, this is the subject matter, marital status, single, 1, married, 2. In this way, all the questions, that is the items and their responses are coded. Like the like question 11, the medium of instruction, Bengali, another regional language is 1, English 2. And then there is the question 12, college studied in rural colleges 1, Calcutta based colleges 2, other urban colleges 3. After preparing the codebook, you have to take the third step. Transcribe the codes from the coded questionnaires into a master table. The master table is the table of codes. It should contain as many columns as the number of items in the questionnaire and as many rows as the number of respondents. After constructing the master table, the real work of research, namely analyzing relationships between variables, begins. Nowadays, you have to prepare the master table in such a manner that you can transcribe the codes into a computer and analyze it. This is the fourth step in data processing. After you transcribed data into the computer, you analyze the data using package programs like SPSS. This is the first step in data analysis. But computerized data processing is expensive and only suitable for large projects. You can easily process data through hand tabulation with with the aid of a calculator. Data analysis. Data may be presented through stem and lib displays, univariate and bivariate tables, graphs and charts like bar chart, pie chart, frequency polygon, histogram, time series data, etc. Descriptive statistics like the range, mean, median, mode, quartile deviation, standard deviation may be used. Inferential statistics like chi-square test, Mann-Whitney-Wilcoxon U-test, correlation coefficient, t-test, etc. may be used. After data analysis is complete, the task of report writing will begin. Now let's look at the report writing process. This is the structure of a research report. Introduction. What problems you are investigating and why? Method. What procedures did you employ? Result. What did you find? Discussion. What do your findings mean? Where do we go from here? Summary or abstract. A brief summary of points 1 to 4. References. Bibliography or there is an alphabetical list of books and articles cited in the report. Appendix. This is optional. It may contain copies of questionnaires, scales, etc. So, which report should you write? The report you had in mind while designing your study, or the report that makes the most sense after you have seen the results? Obviously, the second option is the answer. The report is generally shaped like an hourglass. You see the hourglass here, it is given in this illustration. It is broad, wide at the top, and then it tapers in the middle, and then again widens at the bottom. So, how do you begin? It should begin broadly. Example, humanity has been thought to be basically evil. Then you become more specific. But studies of animals show that altruism often occurs. More specific. Indeed, Brewster reports that worker ants sacrifice their lives. Then you introduce your problem. Two classes of behavior were selected. One antisocial, one prosocial. So you are becoming more and more specific until you introduce your problem. And then you introduce the method and result section. That is the neck of the hourglass. 15 nursery school children were given tests and then observed. Then there's a section known as discussion. These results show that not all pro-social behavior needs to be learned. Then you become broader. Clearly, we need a more symmetrical approach to pro and antisocial behavior. Then you conclude broadly. Humanity can be viewed as both evil and good, both predestined and free, capable of great sin, but capable of great goodness as well. So this is in short how the structure of a research report. Now let's make a detailed study of the introduction. What is the problem being investigated? How do you, how do you write the introduction? You write in English, Bengali, or Hindi prose, whichever language you prefer, but not in sociological or psychological jargon. Rule number two is don't plunge the reader into unprepared into your research problem. Take a step by step approach. Thirdly, try to open a statement about human behavior, not behavioral scientists. Fourthly, use examples to illustrate theoretical points. Example: fans at a football match cheer when their favorite team scores a goal. Weber would term this action as an affectual act since emotion is released. How do you open a statement? Well, first let's look at this statement. Recent research on the forced compliance paradigm has focused on the effect of pre-decisional choice and incentive magnitude. Do you get it? Do you understand this? Well, I at least don't understand what the writer means. But if it is rephrased in this manner, the individual who holds two beliefs that are inconsistent with one another may feel uncomfortable. For example, a person who knows that he or she enjoys smoking but believes it to be unhealthy may experience a discomfort arising from disharmony or inconsistency between these two thoughts or cognitions. This feeling of discomfort has been called cognitive dissonance by Leon Festinger. You see, this is more comprehensive, it is more comprehensible. You can easily understand it. The literature review. This is a very important step in doing research. So while doing literature review, you should try to answer the following questions. One, what previous research has been done on the problem? Secondly, what are the pertinent theories of the phenomenon, if any? How to do literature review? You visit all libraries which you think will be useful for your research. In West Bengal, there is a plethora of libraries. Apart from college library, in Kolkata there is the National Library, the British Council Library, the American Central Library, the Indian Statistical Institute Library. Membership of the National Library is free. Membership of other libraries can be had by paying a small fee. Do internet research. Many academic websites like JSTOR give free access to abstracts. They demand payment for the full paper. You can utilize the abstracts in your research. Visit also sites like academia.edu and ResearchGate. For ResearchGate, you will need a corporate email to be a member. Also visit Shodhganga for PhD thesis. Citations. Cite only articles which deal with your specific research topic. Emphasize the main conclusions, findings, or relevant methodological issues. Methodology. What is your methodology of research? Methodology of research means basic philosophy or logic of doing research. There are a variety of methodologies: positivism, negativism, historicism, interpretivism, classical hermeneutics, contemporary hermeneutics, structuration theory, feminism, etc. The method of research is related to methodology. For example, if you apply positivist methodology, you may use large scale sample surveys. In contrast, if you use interpretivism, you have to remain content with small group studies. Both of the methodological applications are correct. Method of study. What was the basic design? You have a variety of designs to choose from. There is a cross sectional, longitudinal design, etc. For example, I used repeated cross sectional design in my UGC major research project, Change and Continuity in Student Radicalism. Is your study an experimental one? If so, what were the experimental manipulations? If the data was collected through questionnaire, what were the questions asked? How were your interviewers trained for the study? What kind of experience did they have? If measurements were taken on observation, what instruments was given to them? Who were the subjects? How many were there? How were they selected? So you have to discuss all these in your methodology. Earlier I spoke about repeated cross-sectional design. Well, this is the repeated cross-sectional design. In one study, there was one sample. I took a sample and questions. In another study, in the next study, I also took another sample and asked some questions. Ethical issues. The nowadays everyone, all researchers have to be deal with ethical questions. So let's look at the ethical issues in research. Did you obtain written consent from the subjects for their participation? Were they free to withdraw their participation at any time? Were the subjects subjected to any embarrassment or discomfort? Were you observing people who were not aware of this fact? If your study raises any of these issues, be prepared to justify your procedures. Assure your readers that the subjects you studied were treated with dignity and they left with their self esteem intact. Their respect for you and behavioral science increased rather than diminished. Results and discussion. They were combined or separated into two sections. Write results in prose, not number. Setting the stage. First, you present evidence that your study successfully set up the conditions for testing your hypothesis or answering your research questions. Method of data collection. How did you convert raw data into analyzable data? How were the observers' responses to your mail survey coded for analysis? How were observers' ratings combined? Were all measures converted into standard scores? Finally, give the reader an overview of the results section. Now you present the findings. You remind your reader about the conceptual questions you have been asking. Example, we now turn to the first question: are men or women more expressive? Remind us about the actual operations performed. Example, the following is an operational statement. I quote, for testing the extent of radicalism among postgraduate students of Calcutta University. It was decided to study their attitude to radical social change at two levels, systemic and interactional, and construct an index for each of them. Unquote. Tell the answer in your own words. I again quote, Table 12 shows that 34.7% of the students are radical at the systemic level. Whichever of the two levels will consider, it is clear that, contrary to our hypothesis, the majority of the students are not radical minded. Speak in numbers. Example, from table 12b we find that boys are more radical than girls. Chi-square tests show that the differences between boys and girls with regard to their attitude to radical social change are significant. Now we may elaborate or qualify the conclusion if necessary. I again quote, gender is thus a variable that presumably plays a role in shaping attitudes to radical social change. Unquote. Every finding that involves a comparison between groups or relationships between variables should be accompanied by its level of statistical significance. For example, in the above book, that is Students and Radical Social Change, I demonstrated the relationship between political involvement and sex. This is the relationship, political involvement among male and female students. Here, the chi-square test was used to demonstrate who are more politically involved. You can easily see for yourself who are more politically involved. Well, it's obvious the males are more politically involved than the females. And chi-square test shows that there is a relationship between political involvement and sex. In selecting descriptive indices, the purpose should be to show the behavior of people as vividly as you can. For example, in depicting fights between politicalized groups of students in college or university campuses of West Bengal, I use the following cartoon in my book, Change and Continuity in Student Radicalism. See, here two students are beating one, the college, and the constable tells his boss, what a great place for higher learning, boss. Each set of findings should be accompanied by a table, graph, or figure. For example, in my PhD thesis, Students and Radical Social Change, I presented the following bar diagram to show the distribution of respondents according to residence. See, this is the bar diagram. The object is to demonstrate the relation that the distribution of respondents according to residence. You can color the bar diagram bars, or you can use various forms of shading. Now end each section with a summary and lead the next section with a smooth transition sentence. A quote made may thus be more expressive than women. Now let's look at the discussion section. Discussion may be combined with the results section. Begin by telling what you have learned from the study. Each new statement should contribute something new to the reader's understanding. Compare your results with those reported by other investigators. Include questions that remain unanswered or new questions raised by the study. For example, in my latest UGC major research project, Student Radicalism in Post Bengal, I raised one question. Can new theoretical formulations be developed to help explain interest of the youth in right-wing radical movements like the Islamic State? Summary or abstract. It is though it is given at the beginning of the study, it is actually should be developed at the end of the study. An abstract is the barest outline of the problem, procedures, major findings, and major conclusions. Generally, it is 125 words or less. But nowadays, 500 words also abstract are also acceptable. Citation. This is important. Every in a research work, you have to cite every uh, data, every author you mention in your research. You have to give the corresponding citation. So, citation should be generally in parentheses in the body of the text. Example, Durkheim, I quote, Durkheim 1912 formulated a functional theory of religion, unquote. For APA or MLA style, all the components of a proper citation must be present, like author, title, journal, publisher in case of book, date of publication, place of publication in case of book. If one or more components are missing, example author or date, then footnotes or endnotes may be used. Appendix. The appendix contains materials which are too extensive to use in the report itself. What to include? You can include research instruments like questionnaire. You can include other documents like minutes of board meetings. And let me give you some suggestions on procedure and style. Accuracy and clarity. Write simply. Use friends as reviewers. Advise clear and good. Be self critical. Be willing to restructure. Person and voice. Use active voice. Use first person. Instead of saying the researcher has gone to the village X, say I have gone to village X. Tense. Use past tense with reporting research by others. Example, instead of saying, quote, Durkheim says that more Protestants commit suicide than other religions, unquote, say Durkheim said that more Protestants than members of other religions committed suicide, unquote. Gender. Use plural instead of saying he stroke she say they. Instead of the individual who displays his prejudice in personal relationships, right? Individuals who display their prejudices in their personal relationships. In fact, nowadays it is politically correct to be gender neutral. Now we come to the referencing styles. There are two major referencing styles. One is the APA. APA style comes from the American Psychological Association. What do you see? This is the reference of a book. Banerjee A. 2015 Change and Continuity in Student Radicalism. Kolkata, 11 books. Here, the author's last name comes first. Author's first name is only initial. Publication date within parentheses. The title is italicized. Journal article. Gargi G. Impact of domestic violence on reproductive health on married women and their responses. সমাজতত্ত্ব. Here, only the first letter of the title should be in capital letters, others in small case. In case of more than one author, first et al. Example, Bhargava N.K. et al. 2018, Analyzing Social Change and Development in India. Udaipur, New Delhi, Himanshu Publications. With reference to internet articles, use API style only. Example, Pandey JM, Student Politics on the Wane, TNN. HTTP articles, Times of India, indiatimes.com 2000 stroke 2009 203 stroke 25 Kolkata stroke 28006490 one left party student politics Chhatra Parishad accessed on 19/7/2013. Here, first give us the full form of URL. Here, see, this is the full form of URL. HTTP article Times of India, etc. Now, give also the date on which the article is accessed or downloaded. See, this is accessed on 19/7/2013. Now, here we are going, we will discuss now MLA style. See, here Banerjee Anirban, Students and Radical Social Change, Bardwan, the University of Bardwan, 2003. An article, Banerjee Anirban, Globalization in India, the Key Issues, Society Today, an Interdisciplinary Journal of Social Sciences, Volume 1, September 2012. Here first you give author's last name, then the date of publication at the end. And you give the author's full name instead of just the initials. Nowadays, in a computer, you can do automatic referencing. So citation and bibliography is now easier with the arrival of Windows 2007 operating system. It permits automatic referencing and bibliography. Before I conclude, I'd like to draw your attention to one unethical uh, means of report, that is plagiarism. See the example. See, this is one example. This is the original. George Easterbrook, October 1986. On, quote, on a very dark day in 1980, Donald Peterson, newly chosen president of Ford Motors, visited the company Divine Studios. Ford was in the process of losing $2.2 billion, the largest single year corporate loss in US history. The source, Washington Post, managing on the edge. Now, this is see, Richard Pascal, March 1990. On a dark day in 1980, Donald Peterson, the newly chosen president of Ford Motor Company, visited the company's Detroit design studio. That year, Ford would lose $2.2 billion, the largest loss in a single year in US corporate history. Is it not? Is there an embarrassing similarity between these two? See, virtually word by word, virtually word by the similarity, virtually word by word. Here is another example from Michael Medved on February 2, 1991. Apparently, some stern decree has gone out from the upper reaches of the Hollywood establishment that love between married couples people must never be portrayed on the screen. Source the Boston Globe. And see A. Joachim Maitre. What did this author write? Made in May 12, 1991. This is February 12th. Apparently, some stern advice has come from the upper reaches of the Hollywood establishment that love between married people must never be portrayed on the screen. So, these are two examples of plagiarism. Plagiarism, what does it mean actually? It means intellectual, it means copying without any acknowledgement. Simple copying. Here is the definition of plagiarism according to the University Grants Commission. What does it say? Plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or idea and passing them off as one's own. How to prevent plagiarism? First, write in your own words as far as possible. Cite each work you use in any academic assignment in the body of the text. If necessary, give quotations while mentioning the original source. Paraphrase writings of others in your own words while giving due credit. Avoid copying and pasting from the internet without citation in the body of the text. You are sure to get caught. Give full citation of each work used at the end of the work in the form of a bibliography. So here are some references which you can use. For further reading, you may study these works. I'm indebted to Sabir Ali for of Tarabak for editing and technical support. Thank you.